Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about this channel and the game industry. Kind of a meta video, a video about my videos. Kind of to put in perspective, like what I've been trying to do here for a year and a half. Um, and I'll get to that. But before I get there, I need to tell a couple stories. Shocker. So, my generation, I hate the labels, but I would be the very oldest you can be and still be Gen X. My generation was the one that first really got into computers. I had a computer in high school. I was going online. I was really into technology. The previous generation, these are people who weren't very tech savvy. And my biggest fear now is how much they're taken in by fake stories, fake headlines, fake news. You hear about it all the time. I can't tell you the number of times that I've had to send a link, usually to Snopes, to an older relative, basically telling them the thing you just said isn't true. Here's a link. It contains links to other things. I'd recommend you look into it, but what you just said is not true. However, I fear that the younger generation, and I'm talking about all of them younger than me, also have this weird view that the internet is real. They're not taken in by the fake news, but they're taken in by like influencers. They think influencers are real, that they're showing their real selves and their real lives, and these products that amazingly work their way into their videos are real products that they use and aren't just commercials with a new, way of disguising themselves. Ironically, I see a lot of the younger generation rage against capitalism, which they're not only promoting, but I often wonder, what do you want instead? What are you suggesting as a replacement? In any case, my generation was there. I watched the internet start. I was there when it was called Usenet and ARPANET, and when it turned into the World Wide Web. I was a recipient of the very first email spam sent by, I think, two lawyers in Arizona about trying to get immigrants green cards. And it caused outrage because until that point, I don't think you can even imagine what the net was like. But the internet didn't have commercialism attached to it. It was mainly academic, government, and military installations connected on the network. So to get an ad mailed to you was infuriating. Since then, it's all been downhill. I've watched the rise of clickbait headlines all the way through to the modern era of people enraging to engaging, where they get people all upset. So they watch more and they tap into their fears and anger and et cetera, et cetera. This isn't what I want to talk about when I'm talking about my channel in the industry. What I want to talk about is my fear that you, my viewer, think what you're seeing online is real. You think it's real. You think that's the world. And because of that, I want to talk about that, my fear of that, and this channel. Because I am not trying to make this channel to convince you guys to go into game dev. Although there's a little asterisk there that I'll get to. So I'm not trying to convince you whether or not you should go in the game industry or whether you should like the game industry. I'm trying to show you the real game industry from my experience. And of course, it's my experience. It's my perspective. It's what I call my lens. I try to point it out where and when I can. I realize that I can't always see my own bias, but that's true for you, the viewer, too. I've had some videos where people have had taken some mighty strange takes from it, which was not my intent and was certainly not what I derived from my own experiences. But that just is a constant reminder to me that I have a certain way of looking at things, you have a certain way of looking at things, and all I can do is try to show you what the game industry is really like. And when I do that, that means I show you the ups and the downs. I'm trying to show the good stuff and the bad stuff. Sometimes people go, well, why are you focusing on these bad things? I've heard that from people in the industry. They sometimes contact me, why'd you tell that story? That was really bad. And I'm like, because it's a true story. It's what really happened. I don't want to whitewash things. Similarly, I've had people go, well, you're being a little too optimistic, a little too naive about that, naive. And I'm like, I agree. I have a whole video on that. By the way, I'm not linking. I could link to every video I've ever done from this video. So you just have to go find these things if you want to see more about it. What I've tried to do, though, is show all the good stuff and the bad stuff. And you just have to understand and figure out my perspective as we go along. The Temple of Elemental Evil, I think, is the best example so far. Is I did a video where I talked about all the trials and tribulations of making that game. I think it was called The Trials of Temple of Elemental Evil. And after I made it, I realized, ooh, that was really negative, and it makes it sound like I had no fun on it whatsoever. So I tried to follow it up with the fun of making Temple of Elemental Evil. And then I realized it kind of confused people because so much stuff happened on that game that then recently I did my deep dive into Temple of Elemental Evil. So I put everything into perspective, the good stuff, the bad stuff, when these things happen, kind of a chronology of the development of that game. And I think that helps because I've had so many videos on nuance. I've repeated myself so many times to the sound of a snoring dog that this isn't about a bunch of heroes and villains. I'm not the hero. I'm not the villain. The people that I've talked about who've done good and bad things aren't the heroes and villains. It's just people out there really just trying to do their best under a lot of pressure, under a lot of circumstances that you may not be aware of. And so I wanted to kind of do a video like this and just say, again, I am not trying to convince any of you to go into the game industry. I'm basically trying to describe it. Some of you wouldn't like being in the game industry. And I think watching these videos, it becomes very clear to you, yeah, I don't think I want to be in the game business. And the flip is true. Some of you, the game industry wouldn't like having you. That's just flat out, you would not be a good fit. And I think if you're really honest with yourself, you'd understand why both of those views might be true. But if you do decide to go in the game industry, I hope that watching this channel kind of gives you a good perspective and arms you with a lot more knowledge than I ever had when I got pulled into the game dev business at age 16. Literally the day I got my driver's license on my birthday. So I'm not trying to convince you, but I do want to give my little asterisk here. If you decide to go into the game development industry and you've watched my videos, I hope that some of the stuff you agree with, and it helps you make a game that I would like to play. If I have any ulterior motive with this channel, besides just saying, here's what the game industry is like, let me just lay it out, warts and all, that is, I hope some of you, if you're watching my design videos or my code videos or my production videos or my design philosophy, I hope some of you agree with it and then end up making games that I would enjoy playing, that are kind of like a Tim Kaine game. And I think I've said before, of all my games, I think Fallout and Arcanum are the most Tim Kaine-y games I've made. I hope you make modern versions of those, modern graphics and modern engines and modern story techniques and modern subtext of social and political and whatever issues you want to address. My games have been full of them. Wokeness didn't happen yesterday. Games have always had a perspective. They've always had things in there. But I want to be clear, it's been a subtext of my games, not the context. I never made a game saying, let's talk about racism. Instead, it was a subtext of Arcanum, portrayed in different ways. So, go into the game industry or not, based on what you want to do. I hope I've given you some knowledge of what it's like. And overall, whether you decide to do it or not, I hope whatever you do, I hope you work hard, are happy, and enjoy yourself.